Hello and welcome to GigaOm Live. I'm your host, Johnny Baldisberger, and today I'm joined with analyst Enrico Signoretti and Jason Collier. Hey guys. Welcome to the very first episode of GigaOm Live. Now, on this show, we're going to talk about the tech news of the week, as well as discuss some of the new research that GigaOm had come out during the previous week. This is a live show, so feel free to comment, ask questions in the chat. We'll get to those if we have time, and I'll absolutely bring them to the attention of the analyst. But we have a lot to discuss today, so I kind of want to just dive right into it. Starting with, NetApp moved its HQ to a diaphanous building in San Jose. Now, I didn't really understand the importance of this, but you guys both kind of browbeat me and told me this is actually kind of big news.
To find a way to make working from office appealing again. I mean, that's something. The location is cool. I'm not from there, of course, but I went down a few times, and Santana Row is it's just a nice place. So probably it's different than the usual headquarter office. I went also to the NetApp offices a few times in the past. So yes, I think it's really, really cool, and probably we will see more of this from other vendors in the next few months. I mean, what's your opinion, Jason, on this?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I was somebody who's doing commercial real estate right now, if I had any of these kind of primo spots around, in Silicon Valley, like around the Santana Row, or like any place where you've got really good food, like if you're not gonna another company that I had actually ended up talking with, pretty good size here in Austin, is Indeed, the job search site. And they said even when they do allow everybody back at full capacity, they are expecting about half the workforce to show up. So it's one of those things, if you can get like kind of a premier office space that is in one of these areas that's closer to good spots for lunch, good spots for meetings, good spots for like hangouts after work. I mean, I think that's going to go. I think that's going to be great if you're in commercial real estate and you own anything around anything in those particular areas.
So smaller and nice.
Smaller and nicer. Yeah, better locations, right?
Sounds like a plan. I
mean,
yeah. It's something we've been talking about since late 2019, early 2020, is the fact that the workforce is changing, going more remote. Enrico, you and I have had countless conversations about that, starting with having to help your wife set up for remote work.
Yeah.
Is this kind of just part of that change in location, meaning less and less, and being able to be more fluid in your placement?
Well, I talk every day with a lot of people, and of course, everybody's planning to not have a full workforce at the office all the time. I mean, back to my wife. My wife thinks that she will go at her office. I mean, like thrice a week. So not the full week, not anymore. So now she knows how to use a lot of tools that she didn't use in the past. I mean, even Microsoft Teams or other collaboration tools that they use at the office. And so everybody is connected much more than in the past. I mean, from the office perspective, not just your phone or your tablet. It's just that they are using these devices productively now, so that they can work from a remote place. So the idea of having smaller places but nicer, it's really cool. And I think that this will reflect also on how many organizations will be organized across the geographies. I mean, so if you have a branch office today that can host 200 people, tomorrow you will need a location with 100, maybe 50 people that show up at the same time. So the office space will be different, and of course, as NetApp did, probably you will have a nicer place because you want to attract these people back at the office. So they are comfortable at home, so you have to find something comfortable, cozy, and everything to replicate the experience somehow.
Absolutely.
Without the kids and everything else.
Oh, I always bring my kids and my dogs to the office with me. It's one reason I'm forced to work from home. Let's move on though. We had some big news in the kind of the development side. Specifically, Nvidia unveils Grace ARM-based CPU for giant scale AI and HPC apps. Now, my knowledge of Nvidia comes from the fact that they make graphics cards. And so as I read this, I was kind of blown away by, I guess by the scope of what I was reading. It's supposed to be the first CPU designed specifically for terabyte scale computing. What does this mean? Why is this so important?
Yeah, Enrico, I'll let you kick that off.
Well, I think that there are a couple of things. First of all, yeah, some people still think about Nvidia as the graphic card company. Actually, they are no more a graphic card company. They do so many things. They acquired very important companies. ARM is one of them. I mean, the design arm of ARM. It's not the manufacturing. There is no manufacturing there. So they have to build the process to for manufacturing these CPUs. So they are not still there. But actually, this is huge. I mean, they are building an ecosystem around computing parts and also hand-to-hand system. I mean, last week there was not only Grace, there was also these super pods and new workstations and a bunch of other stuff. So we're talking about a superpower, and they can compete hand-to-hand with AMD and with Intel. Maybe they are, even if you look at the vision of the company, if you look at the roadmaps and everything, maybe somebody should be scared about their leadership position in the data center. I mean, in a few years from now, we will have a superpower that can really deliver. And Jason, I know your idea about Nvidia, so maybe you can share.
Yeah. I mean, Enrico, you and I have talked quite a bit. Like Nvidia, one of the things that most people don't know about Nvidia is that from just a sheer market cap perspective, Nvidia is bigger than AMD and Intel combined as far as their market capitalization, which is pretty intriguing. They've made a lot of acquisitions that have strengthened their position within the data center. The acquisition of ARM, clearly that was a big one. But also like acquisitions of companies like Mellanox, who are one of the leaders in InfiniBand, but also then their gig, 10 gig, 40 gig, 100 gig based systems. And ARM, it's pretty interesting. So one, they named this the new product, the new technology. It's slated to be released in 2023. They're calling it Grace, which I think is awesome. It's after Grace Hopper, who was one of the pioneers in computer science. She's actually the person who deemed the term computer bug, which was actually a moth that got trapped in and short-circuited one of the old systems, right? And but anyway, they're calling it Grace, named after Grace Hopper. But one of the things that I did notice in looking through kind of some of the releases, and I watched a little bit of the GTC stuff when Jensen was talking about it, and what they're actually going to build with this, x86 is still going to be very much a part of the ecosystem in which they work with. I mean, they specifically say that Grace is going to be highly specialized processor that's going to be targeting the workloads, such as training for next generation NLP models. And with that though, it's really they're looking on the basically the high end of AI that AI is having problems processing right now. That's where they're going to gear this toward. So it's not like they're going to build Grace, you're going to put it in a laptop and you're going to run Microsoft Word on it, right? That's not really the purpose of it. So they're really going to use it to accelerate kind of the AI and the high performance compute arena past where what they've been able to get out of the traditional x86 architecture. And when you think about it, they're just using the x86 architecture to do the common processing, getting it a job split into many parts, and then pushed out to the GPUs to do the actual processing. And I think what they want is a more kind of robust way to get even more, like I said, targeting, 1 trillion parameters, within like neural net compositions to basically push that out. So I think really they're going to put Grace out. It's not like they're going to put Intel or AMD out of business for sure in general purpose compute. And it's going to be an exceptionally focused chip for very specific workloads, but it's areas where that traditional general purpose compute can't function.
Yeah, and you know what? There is another interesting part of the news. I mean, we're not just about the news, but it's a further validation of ARM CPUs in the data center. I mean, after AWS with Graviton, Microsoft doing the same thing, and many others actually now working on ARM CPUs in the data center. This is the another news that somehow reinforces the message. I mean, ARM is here to do something in the data center. It will be really cool. I mean, even if it's a specialized CPU and not just a general purpose CPU, but also something that potentially will have some feature that will bring additional throughput with efficiency, etc., etc., etc. So it's a neat architecture.
Yeah, and when you go down to basically those real scale out architectures too, I mean, it's one of the things I think I saw at Oracle World this last year, or maybe in the year before. It's where they created like an 8,000 node Raspberry Pi Oracle cluster, right? And all of that's and smaller ARM processors. One of the interesting things too, this kind of came up about when Intel was talking about their Gen 3, and they were talking about, they've got lower core counts. They've got down to like 8 core, and it consumes like 135 watts of power. Well, and then I heard then they could use that for edge. And I'm like, 135 watts of power. I'm like, I want something that can do like 1 watt, right? And that's where ARM's really going to come in. So I think for data center, because there's a lot of things. I mean, if you're going to host like a WordPress site for, a little, mom and pop sewing shop or something like that, you don't need big, power consuming components. And I think that's where ARM in the data center is going to really, the amount of kind of the processing power per watt is going to be of real value to a lot of the data center operators out there.
Yeah, indeed.
And I think the research that Intel's doing and the research they're putting in for this specific workload is actually going to, like you said, that's going to push down into the rest of the ARM architectures. That's going to help in that arena.
Fascinating stuff. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next item. Specifically, Dell Technologies reached an agreement regarding a spinoff with VMware. Now, I feel like, again, we're going to be talking about finances and marketing a lot here. I feel like Jason's trying to trap me into the financial world. But it's an important aspect of everything. Money makes the world move forward, and obviously also makes technology move forward. So to start off, what does it mean by spin-off? Is it the opposite of a merger? Are they going to be two completely separate entities?
So yes. So spin-off, so as it stands right now, and a little bit of history of VMware. VMware went public back in like early 2000s. I don't even remember the exact date. So if you're watching, don't ding me on that. But then through VMware's life cycle, they were actually acquired by EMC. Then EMC was acquired by Dell. Now Dell did not buy EMC to buy basically what was, kind of aging monolithic storage. They bought EMC because EMC had 81% ownership of VMware. And they saw VMware as that's where what was spurring on the growth at Dell, right? The people were buying Dell infrastructure to run VMware on top of it. So by having, basically that acquisition at EMC, then they also had basically access to VMware. Now the thing is, VMware is a huge growth aspect of Dell as a business. And in spinning off, what they're talking about doing is effectively selling their shares as a fundraise moment. So now this is my take on this. And what I see is the decision has less or almost nothing to do with any of the technology strategy within Dell and everything to do with the financial strategy within inside Dell. Because at this point, VMware, if they were to spin off independently, VMware is going to be worth somewhere around $50 billion. So for them to sell 81% of $50 billion, that's a lot of cash put in the bank. Now, also, I think what's probably happening is Michael's also seeing on the horizon that cloud is a larger consumer of basically, components, and they're going to be, cloud guys are going to be buying more Dell gear than a lot of enterprise infrastructures. And in doing that, there's going to be a shift in the way applications are being done. So I don't know if also, if buy low, sell high, right? And I got a feeling that, Michael's probably at a point where he sees VMware is probably at its peak to spin it out and maximize shareholder value. And Michael has always been good within his organizations about leveraging decisions to give shareholder value. So if you're a shareholder of Dell, he's going to make financial decisions that are going to benefit you. And I think this is a financial strategy decision. I don't think it's going to change technology-wise. It's not going to change that much. It's actually probably going to make the competition happier. HP and Lenovo are going to be happier because imagine every time they write a check where they're selling stuff for VMware, knowing that 80 cents on the dollar of everything VMware sold is going right into their competitor's pocket. I mean, that's got to bug you a little bit, right? And so I think it's going to spur more competition for the infrastructure piece. Like I said, the HPs and Lenovo's are going to be really happy about it, and I think it's going to allow VMware to go off and kind of innovate in their own space. And then for Dell, I mean, it's a lot of money to put in the bank. So
yeah, there are a couple of things that I want to add. I mean, this is. As you said, a financial operation first. And this was, of course, well described by Dell and the CFO of Dell and Technologies. So this is clear. I want to add a couple of things. One is that, yes, of course, the advantage for the shareholders is massive. I mean, they are taking the money and splitting whatever. It's also about simplifying the ownership of structure of the various company, which was a huge pain in the neck for Dell. I mean, it was too complicated, and they were blamed for it. So now Dell will own VMware directly, Mr. Dell. I mean, and for the 80%. I don't know exactly all the math behind all this operation or whatever, but the idea is that, as far as I know, 35% of channel revenues come from Dell at the moment. So it's a massive pattern anyway. So it won't go away anytime soon. And also, there is a 5-year agreement for which the two governments will remain close enough to develop solutions together and things like that. So in the short term, won't change anything for the for the user. Of course, everybody will be happier because, as you said, money won't go to Dell indirectly, and it was something that, as you said, many users, not just the vendors, didn't like a lot about, I'm not a fan of Dell, so I want to buy from another vendor. I don't want to, get in the risk that Dell controls the technology that is at the core of my data center and things like that. So I think that it was the best moment and the right move for the entire industry, and Mr. Dell did did it again. I mean, the right thing at the right moment. At the moment, it's the only thing that we can say. We will see in the future if the results of this operation, but I think it's beneficial for the entire industry.
Yep.
I keep doing that. We're managing the sound levels, and I keep muting my mic to not have any background noise while they speak, and then talking away on mute. I had an entire list of questions here, but you guys kind of covered it all. It's interesting seeing how these things move. The history, who's acquiring what, and why is always a fascinating insight into the industry. Our last piece is kind of a springboard topic. The CRN Storage 100. Now, this is a list of 100 storage vendors, and according to the article, the 100 innovative and most impactful storage vendors. However, we at GigaOm have our own method of analyzing these things. So, without getting into our radars just yet, Enrico, can you tell me anything about this list? What's interesting? Anything that was surprised you?
Well, really, no. I mean, 100 vendors is
it's everyone.
I mean, I went through a couple of these lists because the list is interesting. That the list is split in different parts, in different segments, and it's kind of interesting. There is almost everybody. I mean, actually, the problem is if you are not in that list. I mean, why you aren't there? Because there is something wrong with your company if you are not there. So that's my first take about it. And for the rest, I mean, I think that Jason has a better view than me about the channel in general.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the areas, so CRN's really good at putting out lists like this kind of on an annual basis, and there's a little bit of shifting, within these lists. They also break it down into the kind of the coolest, the 20 top component vendors, the 20 like data management providers, the data protection companies, and then software defined storage, which I think is the catch-all for pretty much, in anything, anybody that's left in it. But really, more importantly, this is about a go-to-market component for these organizations. This is, organizations that basically do a majority of their fulfillment through the channel, and count on the channel to actually go through, help develop customers and bring them to the products that best fit their needs. And you're going to be hard pressed to find a company that's not successful on this list. And one of the interesting things about it, I think the CRN list does a really good job of showing what companies are really good at executing a go-to-market strategy. And where I think this complements GigaOm very well is we dive into those individual technologies for specific workloads. So GigaOm's research ties very well into CRN's research. If we come up and you see a top company on a radar and they're not on this list, then that's something to be concerned with. Like, what is their go-to-market strategy? What is the execution strategy? But one of the things that I've found is usually when you're going to find a top mover on a GigaOm radar, they are going to be on one of these CRN lists on how you go out and actually, how do I buy this thing, right? This is going to be that business tie back to really kind of complete that solution from vendor to customer fulfillment.
For anyone who is not sure what we're talking about when we talk about the GigaOm radar, we have a series of reports called the Key Criteria, where we analyze a sector of technology, a technology and their vendors, and we say, okay, what technologies, what criteria make this viable, and what makes it a good solution for enterprises, and then we further break it down and look at those vendors and kind of rank them on how they do on each of those criteria. And through those, you can learn a lot about what you need for your enterprise or your business solutions. So I just wanted to clear that up because we're throwing the word radar around a lot, and maybe some people who are listening haven't yet taken the plunge and subscribed to the GigaOm body of research. But I think this has been a fantastic discussion, but I want to make sure we have time to talk about some of the new things coming out from GigaOm itself. Specifically, we just talked about VMware for a while. We have a webinar coming up with VMware called The Essence of Observability. David Linthicum and Andy Thurai will be talking about cloud observability with VMware, some of their principal engineers, and a CTO. We also came out with a new radar last week, the GigaOm Radar for Performance Testing Tools, which was written by Michael Delzer. And we had 2 solution briefs. Now, solution briefs look at specific vendors. Both of these briefs were written by Enrico. That's right. Big round of applause.
That's right. Enrico's always working.
Most weeks you'll hear at least this one was also written by Enrico. We had a solution brief look at Kasten by Veeam and the Adventist Risk Management Data Protection Infrastructure solutions brief, which features Haiku and Nutanix. So all of that is available, and with that, unfortunately, we are out of time. I want to say thank you to both Enrico and Jason for joining me today. Jason Collier can be found on Twitter at BocaNuts, and Enrico at eSignoretti, both of which are on the screen. You can, of course, find us here at GigaOm, at GigaOm, but you can also find us at gigaom.com, where you can read our blogs, sign up for webinars, listen to the Voices of Innovation podcast starring yours truly, or subscribe to our research, which will get you the full breadth of reports our analysts have written. For all your future-forward advice, gigaom.com has you covered. Thank you, and have a great weekend.
Ciao.
Ciao.